Hello and welcome to Lupus LA's Your Story, Our Fight podcast, brought to you by our good friends at GSK Pharmaceuticals. Today is Yoga Day at the podcast, and we are so excited to talk to Vee Desai Gomez, who is the CEO and lead instructor of Beach Yoga Socal. I'm terrified already of how my body's going to feel, and we're not even going to do any yoga, but the thought of it, it's stressing me out. But I'm so excited to talk to you because I know that your lupus diagnosis really exposed you to yoga. So I'm eager for our audience to hear your story. So welcome to the podcast, Vee.
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell us the origin story of your lupus and how it sort of brought you to the yoga world.
Yeah, so I'm about 5 or 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with my first slew of autoimmune disorders, which was Sjogren's syndrome. And then when I was first diagnosed with that, it was really just very, it was hard to accept the diagnosis, I guess you could say. More or less, I was in like a sense of like, there's no way that I'm going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life. And that just felt very, very daunting. I was taking medications that my rheumatologist prescribed me. I was doing all those things like Western medicine, suggested, but I was looking for something more. I was looking for another holistic option to help like my joint pain and things like that, because even some of the medications I was being given, because I was so young, they were like, all right, well, like, we don't want to put you on too many things either. So then it was like, so I'm like, what am I supposed to do about this pain? Like, I'm just going to sit here and be in pain all the time. And so that's when I started just like researching. I found that yoga was very beneficial for like joint pain, arthritis symptoms and inflammation, and also mindset. So one of the biggest things was like really being able to cope with having this and accepting it, because it's so important how you relate to, what's happening to you. So if I was going to be coming from this sense of fear or, dread or uncertainty, it wasn't going to make it any better. So I definitely was like, okay, I got to find a way that I can be accepting of this, okay with it. And again, like a lot of yoga, I know it seems like it's just a bunch of poses, but a lot of it is also like working on your brain. Like your brain is a muscle like everything else. So it's like exercising your brain and then teaching it how to rewire it and how to associate with your autoimmune issue that may be going on. Like I barely even say that I have Sjogren's. I don't like to attribute it to me. And then I've had lupus the whole time too, but the actual official diagnosis didn't come for about 2.5 years. So it's definitely interesting. Each doctor has their own way of method of thinking. So here in LA, I'm from New Jersey. In LA, my rheumatologist diagnosed me with the lupus. And then I also have interstitial cystitis, which came about during the pandemic, during COVID, which is inflammation in the bladder. So just dealing with all these things. But I found yoga mostly because I was finding a way to find acceptance and ease and grace with what was going on, rather than resistance and anger and confusion.
So when you got the lupus diagnosis, you were already in the midst of learning your practice. And do you think that helped you kind of handle that blow, that next level diagnosis? Did you think the yoga practice softened it for you a bit?
So, yeah, I mean, I think when I had the lupus diagnosis, for me was a little bit less anxious, because it was being treated in a very similar way that Sjogren's syndrome is treated. So it was kind of like they kind of go very hand in hand. But the interstitial cystitis diagnosis, if it wasn't for yoga, yes, I don't know how I would have handled that one. Even with the yoga, it was a lot to process. And it was a lot to accept because, you know, if you look up interstitial cystitis, it's often also known as painful bladder syndrome. You look it up on Google whenever you get a chance, all of you guys. There's definitely a lot of things there that I had to restrict. I had to give up a lot of my favorite things, you know, chocolate. I love chocolate. I had to give up chocolate.
Don't say it. If I ever get
like,
that, I'm done.
I know.
It's my only vice.
Right. So, and so that, initially, like it was, let me think, COVID, it was April of 2020 when that happened. And I initially felt like it was way right back to when I got my first Sjogren's diagnosis. I was like, oh my God, like, how is this happening? Why is this happening? Why me? So unfair, all the things, but I bounced back a lot faster. So that is what's like really important, I think, because to ask you to not feel a type of way when you've been diagnosed with something, that's not fair either. I think you should be in your full realm of whatever you're feeling in that moment. But it's also not healthy for us to stay in that vibration. So because I have the tools that from yoga practice, like journaling, breath work, mindset work, and certain asanas and poses that I know help the bladder, I was able to be like, okay, I'm going to be able to control this just like I can control other things. It took a little bit longer. I didn't stop having a flare up of IC. It went from April through October. So I was definitely in a very low, not feeling so great for a couple of months. But so thankful that I still had those tools, because I think it would have taken a lot longer had I not had that.
So tell me how you start the practice of yoga, and then how does that turn into, okay, let me go to that deeper level. I'm not just going to a yoga exercise class, but I'm taking it to the level where it's going to actually, where I can be an instructor and sort of, you know, go on that path. But also, how do you take one of these tools, one of these Eastern medicine tools, and really get the full depth and breadth of the benefit of it?
So the name of the game for, kind of getting over the initial just doing yoga for the poses and then like getting into the deeper meaning of it, I think it's more or less consistency. So when I was first doing it, it was like I was doing it maybe once a week, just on the computer for like 30 minutes. And I found that I was like, I'm not really noticing too much right now. I'm not seeing much of the shift. But then again, I'm also like, but I don't have time, or I don't always feel good to do yoga every single day. So, how am I supposed to do that? Like, you want me to do that every day? Like, that feels not honoring my body. So then I just started thinking a little bit outside the box. So it's like, okay, what is it that we're doing really? We're taking 5 to 10 minutes to sit down in a sacred place. Doesn't have to be a mat, it could be a blanket, it could be the floor, it could be anything, it could be a corner in your room, right? And you're just sitting down with yourself. So I started giving myself permission to just take 5 minutes a day and stick to that, just 5 minutes a day of laying down on the ground and breathing, right? If I felt like you turning on the video in that moment, and like when I'm there, if it feels right, then, I can go turn on that video and like do a class or something on YouTube. There's like so much out there that's available to us. But it took almost 2 years, I would say, of like practicing and consistently showing up in order to move from yoga is just a physical practice to no, like yoga is this multifaceted practice. There's different modalities of yoga. Walking outside barefoot is yoga. Journaling and writing is yoga. Closing your eyes and sitting there is yoga. And even meditation doesn't have to be so complicated. It doesn't have to fit in a box. And I think that that's what's so important to realize and recognize, that Western mainstream yoga has really put it in a box, that you have to look a certain way, you have to be able to do certain things, you have to go into the studio to practice and do headstands. Like, not at all. There's definitely benefits of that. And if you get there one day, great. But really, yoga is just about learning about yourself. And I think that the onset of autoimmune disorders and issues, a lot of it is usually stress. And, or it's like some sort of like traumatic thing maybe going on in your life in the moment that triggers a flare up, right? Even, like as a patient, you're like, all right, well, when I'm less stressed, I feel better. When I'm more stressed, I don't feel as good. And so then yoga is also a really good tool to manage that and managing that stress. So it was really more or less to kind of square it all up. It's consistency, but it's the consistency with compassion. It's understanding that it just needs to be like 5 minutes a day. I always say to my students, I'm like, guys, 5 minutes of yoga a day is better than no yoga at all, right? Taking 5 minutes to like be like, okay, like where am I hurting today? Is it my gut? Am I tight somewhere else? Is my joint hurting me? Are my knees hurting me? And it's like, like I did the live class where we kind of just like held our knees for a couple of minutes and we were breathing. And you'd be surprised at, like, maybe not right away, but if you just do that for a couple of days at a time, your body can hear you. It listens to you. And so if you're like, hey, like, I'm just taking a few minutes here and I just want to say, like, I'm sorry. Like, I know it sounds silly, but like, I'm sorry that you're not feeling so great today. I'm honoring that and I'm here for it. Let's take a couple of breaths and just kind of, giving yourself that. And then eventually it moves into more like, okay, I don't have to do this full-blown practice. I can just journal on the few things that I'm grateful for, or I can take a few minutes to do some breath work, or, again, just taking 5 minutes for you, which a lot of people don't do. We just hustle and bustle. We go to work. We got to drop off our kids, we're always in that go mode.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've had that similar experience with meditation too. It's just you just have to keep doing it, repeating it. And then one day it jumps to this other level that you didn't expect. And then you go, oh, I get it now, because if you try yoga for a week and then that's it, you say, oh, I tried it and I didn't work, because I did try yoga many, many years ago. And I found it to be, I didn't get to that part. I was in a class in a studio and I never got really the spiritual part, because just trying to put my body into those positions, which, and I'm coming from, I was a competitive gymnast when I was younger. I had total flexibility, but obviously the lupus and years of just not being flexible, it really changed me. And it was a very hard thing to kind of mentally get past. And I probably didn't look at it as a mental exercise as much as I did, lose a few pounds and be more flexible. And so I think that's a really interesting approach to it. And it's really probably the origin of yoga is probably more based in that, it seems like I don't have that history.
No, I would think so. Absolutely. We weren't, the practice is made for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Like yoga is for everybody. So if there's a practice that's for everybody, no one should feel excluded from it. So, and if you're going back to like the origins of when it started, I don't think in India, they were trying to make people feel like they couldn't do the practice. And so again, we have to we as yoga teachers even have this conversation all the time amongst the yoga community is like, what is yoga? And what are we putting out there into the world as teachers to get our students to feel comfortable to come to class? Like, I will never teach a class that if you've never done yoga before and you want to come into class and then I'm going to teach a class of like not acceptable to you, like that can make or break your relationship with yoga. And we have so much influence over that. So it's just such a delicate situation. And I like wholeheartedly, even in my coaching program with my clients, I'm like always talking about how like this is about mindset shift work. And the reason you're doing poses is so that the body could be exhausted so that we can work on the mind. That is the point. We want to tire the body to work on our minds. And for most of us, our body's already tired.
Right.
So
I got
a couple of poses.
I got the exhausted part down. That's no problem.
Right. We've got the exhausted part down. So we do a couple of poses. It doesn't take much. And then you can work on like, I don't know, and just not feeling so overwhelmed with like what we have to carry with these symptoms that we deal with. And the other thing, so much of it is invisible symptoms, right? Like we're walking around town looking fine. You and I look fine, right? Right now we look fine, but I woke up today and I was like, man, I'm tired. I do not want to get out of bed today. I'm like, this
Right.
podcast is going to be a bit for me today, but
Well, I'm really
then,
glad you got out of bed and did this podcast. So
yeah.
here's what I'm going to do. I want to take a little break, and then I want to dive a little deeper into Eastern Western medicine and how to balance those two things, because I'm a big believer in that, and I know you are too. So we'll be right back after this message.
Lupus LA provides financial grants for lupus patients in the greater Los Angeles area, up to $500 per calendar year, to cover costs for everything from electric bills, medical copays, medication costs, and more. Please contact our staff for further information.
Welcome back to the Your Story, Our Fight podcast from Lupus LA. We're talking to Vee Desai Gomez, and we're talking all about yoga. And now I want to, because I know you and I have talked about this before, this idea of when you get diagnosed in Western medicine, at least when I was diagnosed, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, Western medicine really didn't push Eastern medicine. And I feel like now Western medicine has become much more accepting of supplementing energy healing, acupuncture, yoga, meditation, things of that nature. But I think it's a little intimidating for people to, where do you start and what does it do? And how much do you put into Eastern medicine? How much faith do people put into Eastern medicine? I think everybody's different, but I know you're sort of in this, take a little from both pools. So I think that's that's my philosophy, but I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think that it's important to find balance between the two, as you're saying. And my initial, treatment plan was all just like most of us. It was just Western medicine, right? And and right now I live in Los Angeles, California, which is definitely a much more open-minded place than, suburbia New Jersey necessarily, in terms of like different modalities of healing for lupus. I mean, I will use my mom as a prime example. So like, lupus, like many of us, it's genetic. So my mother has lupus. She has lupus nephritis of her kidneys. And she's had that since I've been 8 years old. So, I grew up with my mom having lupus. Mm-hmm. And my mom is very, and you're also, like you're saying, you're talking about over 20 years ago at the time when it was just like, listen to your doctor, listen to your doctor, listen to your doctor. And so fast forward, I mean, we're talking almost 20 something years. And she did not take on any holistic modalities. She had just stuck with her, Western medications and the doctors that she's with. And she's also very attached to her doctors. And sorry, Mom, I love you, but we're just using you as an example. Just very attached to this way of thinking that she has been, conditioned into, and almost to the point where she's fearful of trying anything else, because lupus she's just spent so much of her life struggling with it. She's had so many ups and downs, many hospitalizations for months at a time. Right now she's on weekly kidney dialysis. So it's like, it's taken a part of her life away. And it is very hard for me to watch that, being that I come from a much different mindset than she does, dealing with something very similar to her. But she was also my motivation and my example. So, now that she's on medications for the side effects of the medications, so the side effects of that medication, and she's on like a slew of medications to just cope with, symptoms, because after 20 years of a medication, I mean, something's going to happen inside, right? Like the body is going to react to it and a change is going to take place. So then you have to kind of cope with that, right? Like it literally just happened to me last week. I went to my rheumatologist and I have plaque, like psoriasis in my scalp. My scalp is like so itchy. And I was like complaining about it to him. I'm like, my scalp, it's so painful, makes me want to cry. It's like peeling, it's embarrassing. My hair is falling out. And, literally he looks at me, he's like, oh, it's probably because of the Plaquenil. And I was like, oh my goodness. He's like, Plaquenil can cause that side effect. And you get the whole rheumatologist spiel about that. And I'm just like, oh my God. And now he's like, well, we're going to have to give you medication to deal with that side effect. And I'm like, it's happening. It's happening. And so, you know, like some of those things are out of our control. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have to take that medication to cope with this because I'm not coming off the Plaquenil, which I need so much for the lupus. Right. But like, I also wholeheartedly believe that I'm aware that if we don't incorporate journaling and mindset work, and I go to an acupuncture, I go to an energy healer, you know, I get, you know, I go to massage therapy, you know, regular different types of yoga. You know, I'm not just doing like fast paced. We also do, there's yin yoga and like, you know, restorative yoga and just like different things like that, I think will eventually ends up acting like preventative medicine. Because, you know, at least right now, while you can't prevent it anymore. We're already here. We're taking a medication to suppress the symptoms, but how can we now avoid having flare-ups? How can we avoid keeping our stress low, our mindset right, and our bodies moving? Because all of those things are essential to coping and managing our autoimmune disorders. It doesn't matter which one you have. So that's kind of like where my take on finding that like balance came from. It's why I decided to become a teacher, because I wanted, well, it's why I decided to go and dive in deeper into it and learn about it. Because I was like, well, I need to make this kind of like a part of my life. It's going to have to become a lifestyle shift, because otherwise it's like you were saying, like you can't do yoga for a week and then be like, oh, this isn't working. I guess I'm going to go try something else. Like, no, it's like a slow time. You need to give it that time. So then I was like, okay, if I can make it a part of my life and maybe just help even one person, that would feel so good to me. So, yeah.
So how did you, I think that's right on the money from my perspective, but other people are going to, you know, have to judge that. But I think,
of course,
you know, and I think everybody finds that, you know, I think when you have that fear of something like acupuncture and you do it once and nothing bad happens, and then you do it again, it feels pretty good. Oh, look at that. I feel better. And, you know, and it takes so much time for the effects of some of these things. But I think a lot of it is fear that comes from 30 years of Western medicine to tell you not to do that stuff. But I like that things are changing. So your yoga, your studio has a very special, I would say, California feel to it, because it's all on the beach, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about it.
Beach Yoga Socal. We are Southern California's original beach yoga studio. And yes, we are on Santa Monica Beach. So, well, when I took on the business, I didn't realize how important the aspect of the ocean and nature was going to be. But like initially it was like, oh, it's fun to do yoga on the beach. You know, it's right. Okay, yeah, I'll teach yoga on the beach. Why not? In sunny SoCal, sure. But like, but when I started doing it, and when I moved from New Jersey to here, I moved here in June 2018 when I started teaching yoga on the beach. I started spending obviously a lot more time by the ocean. And initially I was like the only teacher. I was teaching every single day. It was only me. So I would literally be going to the beach every single day. I was, you know, taking my shoes off, putting my feet in the sand, being by the ocean, meditating to the sounds of the sea. And little did I know, like, it was healing me. It was literally actively healing me. And it wasn't until about, I would say, a year into living here. And then, and the initial 5 or 6 months when I first moved here, my flare-ups were so bad. I started spending time by the ocean, and it was really like therapeutic for me. And then I did more research on it, and I realized that, like, you know, getting grounded in the sand, earthing, meditating by the ocean, and being in nature is so vital to the healing, you know, process, that now in like my coaching program that I coach autoimmune clients, I'm always like, have you taken a walk today? Like, have you gone out in nature? Have you stood outside in your backyard, whether that's like in the sand or in the grass or in solid ground, whatever it might be. There is something very healing about going and connecting to nature, There's just something that rewires the brain. I mean, the ocean calms the nervous system. It literally activates your parasympathetic nervous system. And for many of us, our nervous systems are stuck in a fight or flight response where they're just like firing off. And so and how do you turn that off? And so, and being able to actively control turning it off requires, it could feel like I don't have control over that. That's not my fault. Like, how am I supposed to, what am I going to do about that? But like meditating by the ocean, it literally activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It initiates the relaxing, calming response in your body, which is what you need when your body is like up there fighting battles that it doesn't necessarily even need to fight in that moment. So, the beach became a healing modality, and little did I realize that was going to happen. And I also feel like it's another form of yoga, connecting to nature. So again, we come back to the fact that it's not just poses. There's so many other, aspects of it that like coming into play.
Now, I know the question that some of the people out there are going to ask is, how do you do yoga on the beach every day and avoid the sun from an autoimmune perspective?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, a lot of lupus patients need to avoid the sun. So I will say, obviously you want to do the long sleeve sheer light clothing that I do to keep my skin covered. I wear like sheer light clothing. But also, some of my students or some of my clients that, have to struggle with that. They'll take like an umbrella and they put up an umbrella over them while they're practicing yoga, and it protects them from that direct sunlight. Or they do come and practice on cloudy mornings. Yes, we're in sunny Socal, but we do have our share of cloudy mornings. So, beach yoga could be really nice when it's cloudy outside. It's like perfect temps, perfect weather. But yes, if your hindrance is the sun, pack up that beach umbrella, guys, and get down there, and we'll put it up for you. My husband will put it up for you, and then you can practice under the umbrella. Excellent.
Vee, this was really great to talk to you. We could go another half hour, I'm sure. But I think I feel like this was an inspirational conversation, and I'm inspired. I'm still depressed about the chocolate situation that you're in. It's like, it's sitting with me, but
and it was the middle of the pandemic. I'm like, you're telling me to give up chocolate in the middle of the pandemic. I'm like, lava cake. I need lava cake.
I know. I feel for you, but I'm so happy that you're here with us, that you become a new part of Lupus LA. I know our audience has already responded to the yoga practice that you've shared online with us. And tell us before we leave, I know we're running a special promotion with Beach Yoga Socal. So tell our audience about it so they can sign up.
Yes. So if you go to beachyogasocal.com, one word, you will see right at the top header, it says Friendsgiving promotion. So in honor of this month of giving and gratitude and sharing love, I would say, in this month of being thankful, we're running a special where we have 10 shareable classes. So for $150. And we're donating 10% of those proceeds to Lupus LA, which I'm so excited about, to give back to a cause that's so near and dear to my heart. And what I mean by shareable, so, our memberships are transferable, more or less. So if you buy a membership, Adam, and you want to bring Quinn or the rest of the Lupus LA team out with you on that class package, that's totally doable. You can share it. So all 10 of you can come at once, or you can share with a couple of friends at a time. You have 3 months to use the package, and we'll be running this special throughout the month of November. So 10 classes for $150 comes up to $15 a class. It's a really nice gift to share for somebody or to use it for yourself. So, and then come do some yoga with me on the beach.
and support Lupus LA. So it's
support Lupus LA. It's a win-win.
Win-win. Absolutely. All right. We will see you on the beach, Vee. Thank you so much for joining us. And take care.
Take care. Thank you.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, And to always remember, your story is our fight.